Oh, thank God. It's always just, as you know, so intense. Here, you can co-host.
The anxiety of sitting in a space all by yourself.
Just
When-
totally alone. Totally alone. Have you seen the movie AI?
No, I didn't know there was
I
a
think I
movie
might.
called that.
You've never heard of this? It's with Spielberg and everything.
No, no.
I might give a little summary. I got very emotional reading the, the Wikipedia about it. I haven't seen it in like 20 years, but I think it's a great movie and an amazing Wikipedia.
I just right now placed a bid on some AI artwork. So this is interesting.
You bid?
I did. I bid on someone's foundation work, which is
Yeah.
rare. I usually don't like AI art.
Jeez.
Besides,
Save it for the controversy, dude. But
yeah.
it's good. It's good. It's good. It's good. Get out of your system. All right, we got so.
Welcome Piv. Welcome Sove.
I'm inviting. Okay, we got so here. How do we pump this? You posted it, Dove, is that right? I'm going to so hi.
Yeah, let's instead of, we always have this weird issue with the nest. Let's just promote the one that automatically populated. Um or no, we can do the one from 7 hours ago. Here, I'll put it in the nest now, and I will give
Put
that
the
a retweet as well.
Oh yeah, this is the one where I ask about, because it's yeah, I think it's basically part of the premise is people, what happens when the AI art starts saying like, you know what, I don't really like the human art, because this is this movie. Well, I'm going to get into this movie. So, are you familiar with the movie AI?
The Spielberg movie?
Yes,
Yeah.
amazing movie. I was just telling Dove that I was reading the Wikipedia page and I was like getting very emotional, but I don't want to spoil it for anyone. But basically, that movie, the AI wants to be the real boy essentially, and so how quaint is that? At some point, the AI will be really, brutally criticizing your NFT collection. And so, what will that be like? So that's why I like this tweet.
Yeah, the sooner the better.
This vicious criticism, and then he'll be saying something like, "Yeah, I mean, really like to be challenged and open to criticism, but this is like really, really biting." Let me tweet this whole thing again here. Let's get the people coming. Oh, it posts another tweet every freaking time. Like when I start the space, it's like
It's
another
okay.
independent tweet.
Don't
All
worry
right, I'm
about
gonna do a
it.
quote tweet and just say this is happening
No,
now.
no, you don't have to do that. Just let the automatic one rock, because what's good about the automatic one is that it'll go into everyone's feed, right? So everyone who's sorting by newest tweets first, they'll see it, and they don't really need to have a caption, right? They just kind of see that the space is live. But I think Twitter kind of tricks you into some bad engagement practices, because you have the instinct to quote tweet it and say space is live now, and then you're quote tweeting a link to it. But then what you've done is essentially tweeted twice within like 60 seconds of one another, or 5 minutes of one another. And when you tweet in quick succession, the algorithm like de-ranks you.
So I got to ride with this bear link right now.
Yeah.
Whew, I'm just looking at it and I'm just thinking, wow, I would never, ever just tweet a bear link. Well, at least what about changing the title of the space?
Sure. Yeah. Capsule
Okay, let me do that.
21 AI
How
chat
do
with
here we go.
Middlemarch,
Okay.
Dovetail, Piv, Sov.
Okay.
Sure.
AI art chat featuring at Unreal. So okay, done.
So,
Piv, who is the other person we were talking about? Because in your gallery right now, so you know this, there's AI art as well.
Yeah, from an incredible AI artist, Burke.f. Yeah.
Didn't you hit him up?
Piv said he might join us later.
yes, I hope so. Probably he will be. But he had a guest, he said, and after that. But
Can I put his name in the title, or is that too far? Get people amped. There might not be enough space. I'll let it chill. But it would be nice to see him. I must admit, I am a little disappointed that no one else here is verified. That is, not typically my, dream to be the only verified person in Egalitarian, but it's fine. It's fine. I guess it doesn't boost your thing yet. Is that right, resident algorithm, Dove?
No, it doesn't matter. The original plan that Mr. Musk had was that if you paid for Twitter, you would get like automatic promotion over non-verified or like non-Twitter Blue accounts. But they axed the whole Twitter Blue verification process entirely. So that never got integrated.
Wait, what do you mean they axed it?
They turned off the thing where you can pay $8 for a blue check. That's like that lasted 48 hours.
Wait, are you serious?
Yeah.
It was causing problems.
And so what about all the people who got it? What about the...
Oh, they still have it, I believe.
Wow.
Yeah, essentially what Twitter did is that they released a POAP for like the worst 48 hours in Twitter history.
That's amazing. Well, I was verified before that, so I didn't have to pay anything, and now there's no boost, and so everything's gone. Okay, so it's, I guess that's just crazy because you think to yourself, why am I even doing anything? Like I try to pay attention and be engaged, and then it all gets rolled back, and I'm right back where I started like 2 weeks ago. Like I try and follow all this stuff. You did good though, Dove, and I guess you also knew. So okay, people are filtering in.
Well, it helps that I don't have a wife and kids to tend to. I don't own a home. These things kind of preclude me to being more chronically online.
Yeah. I mean, I think. Thank you. I and my daughter thanks you as well. My daughter thanks you as well because that way I can. She's very young, but I can carry myself with the intentionality of knowing, thing or two. So, okay, at 5:10, we'll get started. People will continue to come in. This is a podcast taping, so I don't care about. Basically, what the movie AI tells us, no spoiler alert, is that there's a long future and that people are going to be like looking at this and trying to understand humanity later. So I'm not. This is the aliens. This is basically the on-chain art thing that we've always talked about. So the point being, I don't care if we start and there's like a ton of people in here. They'll come in, and so yeah, basically we'll talk about AI art. I think you, Sov, as a special guest, obviously. Want to get your perspective. Dove also has done some stuff. Piv is kind of the AI art antagonist. That's how I'm going to cast him, and I'm sort of neutral, basically. And so we'll talk about kind of, some of the work y'all have done, and then maybe some concrete pointers for like someone trying to, do some cool stuff themselves, because it's not so easy. That's one thing I'll say as a neutral party. This is the one thing I will say as a neutral party. It's not so easy. I thought I'd just start getting on there and typing, and it's not easy at all, which is kind of an obvious thing to say now. Anyone who's tried it knows that. But months ago, when I first got into Midjourney, I cracked my knuckles and I was like, all right, just step aside. This is going to be very, very easy, but there's a lot of work to do. So, hey, okay, we got a Johnny Cinco. Thank you. Welcome. All right, let's do it. Welcome, everyone, to the Capsule 21 podcast. My name is Tom Middlemarch. My co-hosts are Dovetail and Piv, and we are Capsule 21. Capsule 21 is an art collective dedicated to art and the creation of art on the blockchain, the creation of timeless art through blockchain technology. And today we are starting our weekly podcast, which is recorded every Thursday at 5 p.m. on a Twitter Space live. And we have a special guest here today, Unreal Sov on Twitter, who goes by Sov, capital S-O-V. And we are going to be joining him. He's going to be joining us in a conversation about AI art. Sov is where to even begin, but on the subject of AI art, Sov has put out two very interesting collections, most recently Medallions, which I actually worked with him on. It was a lot of fun. And so we're going to talk to him about his experience in AI art, his experience generally. Who is the real Sov? Who is the Unreal Sov? We're going to talk also to my co-hosts who have a background themselves. Dovetail right now has a very cool collection on Foundation that he made throughout the month of October that is AI art involved. And Piv is kind of the anti-AI art co-host. And so we're going to hear from him as well. He put together a satirical punk derivative called Midjourney Punk, which is a satirical take on AI art. So why don't we start there with the most anti-AI art perspective, turning it to just Piv. How would you what was your inspiration behind what is Midjourney Punk, and what does that capture about AI art to kind of position ourselves in the world right now?
Well, I'm not really anti, but
I know you're not anti. I'm trying to create controversy, basically.
Okay. But this one was just it does seem to have difficulties with faces, with the little things with faces. So it was just a punk with a couple of little mistakes. That was actually the
kind of a
smeary
aspect. But so this is the anti-AIR perspective. But let's turn it over to Sov, our special guest. Really, the very last time we were talking to Sov in this capacity, we were actually a guest in his gallery, and we had a lot to talk about. This wasn't even on the radar. So maybe, Sov, could you just tell us a little bit about, how you got here, and then talk about your sort of journey, your journey through AI art from zero to having completed the collections you've done.
Yeah, sure. First, I want to say how much I love Midjourney Punk. So we shouldn't move on too quickly from Midjourney Punk. So if you haven't seen Midjourney Punk yet, I'd recommend finding it somewhere on Piv's timeline.
I'm gonna retweet it if I.
Yeah, we could put it up there again. All irony aside, I think it's a really great piece, and I loved it the first moment I saw it. So I think it's got like a punk done in Midjourney style, and it's was it actually done in Midjourney or?
No, it was not. But the first thing was the background. I only did the background.
Yeah.
Because that's often very typical with the like orange gray.
Yeah.
It seems to like that. I think it's trained to make beautiful things. I think.
So
it was first just
right.
Sorry, it's in the nest now. If you want to look at it.
Well, among the many things that you're so good at, Piv, is recreating other art forms into your own work. And what you did in that piece was you captured the typical Midjourney background and the funny eyes on the punk, like in a perfect way.
Yeah.
So,
indeed. Mm-hmm. But it often happens in not in one step, but in two steps. Like first I had the background, and then I said, "Oh yeah, I could change the punk too."
Yeah. Anyway, really enjoyed that piece a lot. So,
But the background, just to drill into that a little bit. So the background itself is not actually like messed up in any way or like blurry, so to speak, in any way, but rather just sort of kind of part of the recognizable, opinionated way in which Midjourney will, kind of create like a color scheme on the background if you're not like more specific. Like
Yeah.
Midjourney kind of tends to this sort of thing, and so, it's not as obviously, like, oh, Midjourney messed up, and it's also kind of like it's kind of even more a subtle, commentary on it. Really, that you even when something doesn't look weird, you end up with a certain cast, a certain shift. So I think, yeah, that it gets kind of both across, really.
yeah. So I mean, you could say Midjourney itself has a style, and
Mhm.
in terms of backgrounds, it's often this type of gradient, a bit of a softer palette, you could say. It's quite recognizable to the fact that like I've actually wondered, like, do I, as an AI creator, do I actually have a style, or am I just using a Midjourney style in my work? Which has been an interesting question, and I've kind of come to the conclusion that it's all pretty fresh, but like these things could be like using a particular type of paint or a brand of paint or something like that in one's work that could be recognizable in other works as well. But Middlemarch, should I get to your question?
So yes, so just like, I mean, there's so tough to begin because sorry.
Can I say something?
Yeah, go.
I think we were all there when Soph discovered AI. It was in the green room, right?
Yeah, so what's your recollection? I remember that I was there with Dan Caldera, who the exhibit
indeed.
was on. The moment where I think that so he was explaining his process in the green room, but what happened was that a couple of days before that, we were in there doing a mic check to make sure the sound went accordingly, and that's when he was telling me about. So technically, it was a couple of days before
Yes.
we were in there together, and he was telling me what he did, and then he sort of told the same story over again a couple of days later with all of us. Yeah.
But then it also somehow happened for me. It was the first time that I really saw like, wow, this is nice to.
Yeah.
So it was also my discovery, I think, of it.
That's really
or the first time that I really thought.
So something special about being in the green room and Dan's work being in there, which we could all see, and Dan explaining it, super benefit.
Mm-hmm.
I think that is a good place to start because, I mean, I'd heard of Midjourney before that. I knew about the AI art for quite a while, but I was doing other things. And so when I was in there with Dan and he walked through his steps in his creation process as a creator, then of course, like, it clicked really quickly because, you're getting it directly, getting the download directly from someone who's doing it. And that was really intriguing for me because, well, it just was. I mean, obviously the implications are pretty big. So that night I went in Midjourney myself, like a couple hours later, and threw in a prompt. And that first prompt I tried became Guardian 1. And I could see that this could become something bigger, and just kind of went with it from there.
So what was that first prompt? That's amazing because you could find that out, right? You could go to the software and find that out, but do you happen to remember?
I mean, if you have access internally from Midjourney, but like you can also, it's all private, so you cannot see it publicly.
You can't. So I could go, but in the Discord. So the way Midjourney works, right, which is actually completely bizarre. If you just take a step back for like 1 second, is you go to a Discord and use a Discord bot to basically give these prompts. So it's a smart thing because then they're all public, so no one will do anything like off the rails. But then I could theoretically go and search that thing, and maybe they delete it after a while, but I could see it in the Discord, and then you have your own view on the website. You could see that for yourself, right, on the website, or how does that work?
Right. I mean, the whole process is so innovative, and as soon as I jumped in there, it was unlike anything I'd done before. Like, everyone's just creating art in Discord. That's their main hub, not on a website, not anywhere else. not on anything you download. Like Discord is the place where everyone's just making this insane art. So it starts off, you go in Discord, you throw in a prompt, whatever it is, and you see your image within seconds. Pretty great. So what you can also do if you want to make things private, you can pay for a membership, which is private. And so that then you do your creation in a private channel with a bot. So you're just giving commands to the Discord bot, and the bot is takes your prompts back to their servers, works it all through, and returns the image to you. So you just interact with bot commands in Discord.
And so anyone can see that at the time. If someone's in the channel with you, they could see as you compose, and that's kind of cool.
Right. Yeah, exactly. When you jump in for the first time, you go into one of the channels and you start making art. It's really great. And if at any point you would like your text prompts, because it's sort of the secret sauce behind the ultimate image. If you ever want to make this private, you can pay for a subscription, and then it's no longer in the public channel.
So Guardians was, just to characterize it very briefly, Guardians is a 99 token collection that is, well, let me just say, it was the first thing that I saw where it was like, okay, someone really tried to do a lot of them in the same theme. Basically, was my level 1 interpretation of Guardians, because it's very easy, to play around with it. And even in the green room that day, there were 15 or 20, but to do 100 or 99, obviously, you had to have an idea there. You had to, test a lot of things, do a lot of things to get to that level. I think it's, harder, I think, for me personally to imagine kind of the process there versus the stuff I've played around with when you're just trying to get one thing. You say, okay, cool, I got my one thing. So how did you kind of have the idea to do a lot? And then how did you kind of, what sort of changes and ideas do you have to do to sort of create a lot that look cool on the same theme that was not just like, okay, let me try to do a couple that are cool?
Right. So once I did 6 Guardians, I knew this could be a lot bigger, and I had to sort of quickly figure out what the right size was. So after 1 Guardian, I knew this was amazing, and I was on the right track. And then 6 happened pretty quickly, maybe the next day. And you just see the 6. They're pretty much the first 6 that exist now with 1 or 2 changes, but you just see the possibilities quickly. So I was like, oh, this could be a lot more. This could be a collection. They're diverse enough. They're different enough where, you can have a larger number and not sacrifice originality and quality. So I like special numbers. So, it seemed like 100-ish could be good. And 100 is a pretty normal number for a smaller collection, but then there's something more special about 99. Also, you do find the number 99 with like angelic type stuff, so it seemed like a good number for Guardians. So I just kind of fixed that in and went for it. At a certain point, I was wondering if it was maybe too many, because like you were saying earlier in Middlemarch, so you do have there is work you have to put in if you want good images. It's not it isn't all done for you. But it seemed doable. Yeah, so we had 99, and like I felt like to make it interesting, it had to be something more than just 99 of these images in different forms. So, everyone in our space, we do like attributes and qualities, and I thought it could be a really interesting thing to take attributes that are generally associated with angelic stuff and throw those in there. So do you want to, I can continue, or you can ask something there.
Well, so yeah, I mean, I was just, even on the last point, you describing your process, I kind of jumped into my head, I'm curious what prompts you use, but then maybe that is kind of like part of like the secret sauce, because it's kind of funny, right? Like if you look at like, programming, for example, and, generative art, for example, there is open source and non-open source, but then when it's like blockchain stuff, it's all pretty much open source. And, even art blocks, which is, minified JavaScript. So it's like obfuscated in all these ways. Still, you could see it, you could pick it apart, you could figure it out. And so, if you want to make your own ringers, to use an example, cool art collection, shouts to Dimitri. If you want to make your own ringers, you could probably figure out how to do it from piecing apart that JavaScript. So, we have tended towards a pretty open source world when it comes to generative art in that way. Obviously, when it's like a one-of-one thing and a person is in, a program creating something, you don't get to see a screen recording of their mouse movements or whatever. But curious how you think about that. So in terms of like, hey, here are the prompts you could use to generate not this exact thing, of course, but a thing that's very close to this, or here are a couple prompts or a couple things that I used, or how do you feel about the status of the prompt and the privacy of that in relation to the creative process?
Yeah, it's really interesting on both sides, I think. I think I was influenced in my introduction to it by Dan Caldera. I think the way he described it was like, these prompts are like your seed phrase and you never tell anybody. And so before I'd even made anything in Midjourney, I was like, oh, okay. And, that's important.
That's
So
amazing.
Yeah, I remember that he told it indeed that way, and for me that was also special. That I can't recall how he called it, but it was like he found something really, really special to have these green forms. So indeed it was something like you can never tell what it is.
yeah. I mean, he'd gone through, I think he said hundreds or thousands of prompt variations to find something he was happy with in the end. So I do think that was really special and important to him. So to him, it was like a seed phrase, and that's just how I started approaching it. I think so. There's both sides. On one, it's really cool to have something mysterious about the art where the text prompts are not known, and you do not know how the creator went from nothing using the AI to something. It's like hard to copy. I think that's really interesting in art, where you have mysteries and you have unknowns. On the other hand, I can see it's enticing to be able to recreate things and to try on your own using the source code, so to speak. So, I mean, what I've done is they're private for now. I keep in mind that it could be interesting to release the prompts later and let people play with them as in whatever they'd want to. But I see both sides of it.
I don't think you
I mean,
should.
You don't think I should?
No.
Yeah.
I don't think you should. It's like being a magician. You never want to reveal the trick. I wanted to ask, in the Guardians, and as well in the work that I've done with AI recently, there's like a there's a spirituality to it. Like Guardians is, you said, like angels, right? You were influenced by like angel numbers in making the collection. Is that right?
Yeah, a little bit. I mean, 99 is a number that you find in spirituality here and there.
Yeah, it's like a multiple of 33. Yeah. What was your inspiration? Like, how did you land on that imagery for the collection?
There's been something just very fortunate in my experience with AI and Midjourney. It's all really fallen into place quite naturally. So, like I said, I sat at the open prompt for, I don't know, half a minute or a minute, because it's your first prompt. What are you going to type? How's this going to work? And I didn't know what I was going to put in, and then I just threw something in that felt like what I wanted to see. And boom, there was Guardian 1. So I didn't, and I see other people's prompts in the public threads. Mine are much simpler than some of the longer text prompts where you can put in 20, 30 words. I use something very simple. And I didn't imagine what it was going to be like. My imagination is quite broad. The text prompts reflect one's imagination. And my imagination was quite broad about what I was interested in. And then I let the AI, or in retrospect, I let the AI, in a sense, emanate a form of what that could be.
Right.
And I mean, because that's cooler. Because let me just say this. It's like you mentioned 20 words, right? Like I think there's a secret thing, the double secret, which is the other reason people don't want to reveal the prompt, is because the prompt, right, can be rather embarrassing because it can be rather crass. You know, it's like the thing that you're telling the AI to do something that the AI thinks. And so, like, for example, here's a prompt of mine that I actually bought off of a website for $2. So I buy these things. I don't care. Here's the prompt. A somber Ernest Hemingway, ocean in the background, cinematic, award-winning portrait, symmetrical face, photography, shot at 85 millimeters, depth of field, you know, intricate, ethereal light, you know, all this stuff. Like, isn't it kind of embarrassing? Like, you're an amazing world-renowned artist, and you reveal a prompt and it has like award-winning portrait in the prompt. Like, that would make you. I want something that'll win an award. Like, you're a feted artist. You know, it's like completely absurd. So it's nice to know, and I'm taking it from this, that you do not put award-winning thing in your thing. Can you confirm that?
I can confirm.
No pressure. You don't have to confirm if you don't want to. I think it's fine. I think it's whatever works. Like, that's the beauty of the AI thing, right? Because it doesn't actually mean anything. It's just putting things together. And so I think the AI, the reason it's so good, you know, let me take you a step back with AI as I see it. So there's this famous book called Gödel, Escher, Bach, which, like, if you're a nerd, you've probably heard of this, maybe you've read it. And in the book, Douglas Hofstadter wrote it, and this was from the 70s, and he was remarking on AI. And he was basically saying, chess is so hard that by the time a computer will be able to beat a human at chess, that computer will be able to decline to play chess and decide to compose a sonnet instead, right? And it turned out that chess was way easier than composing sonnets. And now we are finding that composing sonnets isn't even that hard, because you can just, by just smushing random things together, in a way that, like, is emulative of the things you've seen. You don't actually have to be, like, deeply emotionally sensitive as a computer. That's why award-winning portrait works. So and you know, who knows what type of, like, if you were trying to create, like, an attractive person, you know, what type of crass thing, you know, could you imagine, you know, because it's like, you know, superficial. You say, like, whatever, you know. So my point is just that, like, I can see there being some embarrassment when it comes to what the secret sauce actually is. Whereas on the programming side, typically, if it looks pretty, most of the time, maybe it's not super complicated, but at least it's like programming, you know, stuff. So that's very interesting. Have you ever bought a prompt? So I've bought like 5 prompts.
No, I haven't. But
what is buying a prompt?
I didn't even know this was a thing.
Yeah, there are people who are selling the prompts that they've made that they feel that produce something nice. God. Yeah, you can go to a website and you buy the prompt.
Wow.
I mean, Middlemarch, you can tell us your process on that. I thought that was interesting too.
I think it's I can't find it in my history. It's like prompt something, and basically, it's like $2. You go in, it's Stripe, it's pretty good. It shows up as separate things on your bill, which is annoying. I got that one, the Ernest Hemingway one I got from that, and then I got some good corporate Memphis, which you actually told me about, Dov, and I knew about it before then, but you brought it to my attention. Like, I was trying to get some good, like, corporate Memphis stuff, like the happy people in the Dropbox thing. So I bought a prompt that was just the same thing Dov told me. But then I got another one about, like, how to create, like, a vintage stamp. Basically, like, it was you know, for these things, like, where it's not like some super, like, creative thing necessarily in terms, it's just a look, like someone has spent 20 hours. Yeah, it's basically like a here's what it's called. It's Apple Lo-Fi Impressa Stamp 16th Century. So that's free, by the way. That cost me $2. What is Impressa Stamp? I looked at it. It's like, these are like the, you know, it's kind of important to know about human culture now, again, because you know the little details to feed the
you know, it's like a website template. It's the same kind of idea. Like, someone's made a template that looks kind of nice, and you could buy that for your website, or you could do it with a text prompt.
Yeah, I'm just mind blown by this. I want to. I
was too.
I want to put the prompt. I use the very similar prompt. Okay, so for the series that I did, I kind of have like a wrapper, right? Imagine, you know, when you're typing in HTML or in like BB code, what's that called? Like Markdown. You have the thing in brackets at the front, and then you have the thing in brackets at the back. I kind of have that sort of system with the prompt that I use, and then the subject goes in the middle of these adjectives and descriptors, right? If you can imagine that. That would be very cool to mint a text NFT that was your prompt. you know, if you did a collection and then I want to give like an open edition to people. So it'd be cool to make the open edition, you know, just like here's the crux of it. That's kind of fascinating.
I'm going to tweet a picture of this. Yeah, I mean, I think, to me, it would be cool if it were more kind of structured in the way you describe, where you basically, what I would like is to, you have the basic structure, okay, I want to see like it's a person in, holding a cat on a couch professionally for, and then you could kind of play with it, with the color of the couch or whatever. I mean, so in terms of variations, right? Like this is something that is obviously core to your work. So like what Midjourney lets you do, and I think this is kind of a beautiful thing when it comes to the, emergence of, kind of formal how this stuff works, where, now it's just a meme because Midjourney did it. I think DALL-E does it too, that you get 4 variations for free, basically, every time you do something. Now they could have said 2, they could have said 8, but they said 4. And so, I guess for you, so like I have 2 questions. So one, Soap's next collection was his collection called Medallions, which I really, really like because it built on Guardians, not just in terms of the visual aspect, but the formal aspect as well, kind of really, and I'll let you explain it. So really playing into this question of like what this 4 number means and the significance of this arbitrary but very significant number. So there was playing with form and using the variations, but there's also just on the most basic level using variations to achieve a higher quality result, which I'm sure you did, on Guardians, and everyone, has this experience of trying to pick the best one. So when it comes to variations, so maybe kind of walk us through your feeling and process on that, and then Medallions and everything.
Right. So Medallions is based on the quadrant variation, the variation of 4. So you start with an initial image after your prompt that you receive, and when you variate that image, you get 4 other images that are similar but not the same, and they can be quite different as well. But they are all related to the initial image through I guess Midjourney gives you a seed, like a seed noise, a random seed, which makes the 4 new images different. So I don't know when, but somewhere really early in Medallions, it was clear that originally it was just going to be 100. I was just going to give them away to all the Guardians holders, and if you multiply it all out, then you have 2 generations of Medallions. So you start with the first one, you get 4 more, and I was just going to go super strictly and just see as an experiment with AI what happens when you create a collection that is all related through sort of generations of imagery. And it's not something you really do if you don't have this sort of tool that you're using, because, I mean, you could create your own artworks and then have them be similar, like a Picasso blue period or something, where you're just using a similar theme. But these images are actually, like technically and officially related to each other. And I thought that fits so well with the cosmology or the story behind Guardians, in that they are these celestial beings, and like celestial beings don't really breed as humans do. It's more of like an emanation process where one thing sort of comes out of another, and it was mirroring this sort of like celestial being emanation process was really mirroring what was happening in the AI art creation process, and I thought that was a really nice linkage. So I just started experimenting with the results of using just simply variations, a technique to create a collection.
Can you talk more about what you were just saying about the emanation and the angels and how that related to AI technology?
Yeah, it's kind of a weird linkage, but
Yeah, no, I understand it completely. I'm really curious about that because I've kind of gone down that thought pattern,
yeah,
and I thought that was very cool about Guardians, was seeing people approach kind of this like spirituality and how it relates to AI. It's like very fascinating.
right. So if you've ever been interested in angels or even read things like Milton, Paradise Lost, like the angels show up everywhere. They're kind of a part of culture, I'd say, for over for thousands of years. It's a big theme in art and religion and culture. And if you pay attention, if you're interested, you see that there are hierarchies of angels. Not all are the same. Some are, closer to God than others. And if you get into it, like it's kind of a creation. It ties into the creation myth. In the beginning there was nothing, and then from nothing everything originated, including the world we're in. And that's an emanation process. It's a stepwise process where from nothing there's something, and then from something there's something more manifested, and it just kind of trickles down in hierarchical layers of emanation until you have like the material world. So that's cosmology, and it's kind of the same in all religions or all spirituality. There's some element of this cosmology, and that's what Midjourney was doing. I mean, it's not spiritual, but it's a technical process in terms of artwork, and that really jumped out at me, and I knew that could work really well, and it was really fortuitous to have those two things coming together, which I was both interested in to create. I don't know, just an interesting mix to have a collection in.
Yeah. Is that were you kind of having those thoughts like when you came up with the initial prompt for Guardian 1, or did that come about kind of like when you saw Guardian 1, it kind of let you, oh, now I see it, now I understand?
No, this idea didn't come about until Medallions originated, which was pretty far in the process of Guardians. So Guardians is done differently. Guardians is based on using a few extra prompts to get the attributes across. So there isn't a Guardian, I don't think, which is emanated from other Guardians. That's not really the setup with Guardians. There is emanation in the Guardians world, but like that's not how the Guardians collection is created. It was only when the Medallions popped up, sort of towards the end of the time I was working on Guardians, where I had the idea that you could do a collection just on variations. Guardians is more open. It was my first experience with AI, and my goal there was just creating great Guardians that had the traits, the attributes that related to like a Guardians world.
Right. Do you see that as like I don't know if you're like a spiritual person. Do you see it more as like fictive, like lore, or like kind of drawing on like historical? Because the Guardians are cool because it's angels, and then it also has things like trumpets. So it's these things that you see in like very classical paintings done in this very like contemporary like Midjourney way. And I just wonder, like, how do you view those kinds of things? Like, you don't have to answer this question if it makes you uncomfortable, but I'm curious if you are spiritual or if you don't view it in that way, if it's more of like just a story.
Well, like I think all these things are woven together. Like everything that we have as a story is built on extensive culture and thousands of years of our culture. So I'm not trying to like sidestep the spirituality question, but like I'm not an atheist, so these
Okay.
things do have meaning for me. I didn't pick the Guardians for nothing. Like I am interested in like you could say that angels, they're often used to represent sort of the better half of humanity, right? There's angels and devils, and so you just, in the most generic way, angels are the best form of us, or something we aspire to, or something we could move to, to better ourselves.
Right.
So I like that as a theme. I think that's the cool theme, and I think when I made Guardians, it was to have that seed, that element of something of that in that.
Right. Yeah, that's very fascinating. Thanks for elaborating on that.
Yeah.
So question. And I really appreciate this, and I just want to make sure that everyone kind of listening, when we say emanation and stuff, like if people want to emulate this in their own work and just want to know, basically, roughly speaking, right, what we're talking about on a very literal like UI basis is you have a single origin, a Genesis person, a Genesis, forget Guardian Medallion. You generate something in Midjourney, you get the variations, and then you get the variations of those variations, basically. So you can go into Midjourney and do this yourself, which I don't think many people do, just because I didn't think to try it, and it's also kind of a pain to do. You have to like manage images and do whatever, but like you get the variations, and then you use the variations to generate variations from themselves, and the result you're saying is actually pretty interesting because you can track this this lineage, and this is what you see actually in the collection of medallions. But this is basically the idea. If anyone wants to like try this.
Yeah, and of course, you can use that's just one way you could use this to do your to do a collection. You could just throw in new prompts all the time if you wanted to also.
Yeah, and I'm sure there's other stuff. But to me, what I love about this though is I love a constraint. I love a thing that's happening that's not just like try to do something cool, that's like sticking to something and seeing it through, even when it's like hard and annoying to do that. And this is a constraint that I find so cool because it's like built into the most popular, the groundbreaking platforms for doing this. So it's like this natural kind of like, space to fill with the collection. And yet I have not seen anyone do it. So I think that's just like a really cool thing. Now, when we were working on medallions, and I think this has happened also in the mints, people have seen this, like you do end up with some unique things, right, that crop up. And that's just kind of, luck, basically. Like, sometimes you'll get like I don't want to reveal any details of medallions, but sometimes there'll be just something that's new, basically. And is that kind of part of the random process?
Yeah, totally. And I think that answers part of your question, Dov, about when I thought this was going to be interesting. So I did, you do a few test runs to see how something's going to work out. And pretty early on, the AI came up with something that was unexpected. Just like you would have in biological genealogy, you get you get offspring that look different, that you wouldn't expect. And that's when it got really interesting, because the AI was coming up with stuff that was quite different than, you could say, the ancestor artwork. And I wasn't choosing that. Like, there was nothing I had done. So I think what Middlemarch is referencing is there is a certain type of medallion that we're calling a portrait medallion. It's a portrait. It's sort of like from the chest up, and it's a human-like figure. It's actually a guardian, but it's in a human form, which is quite different than the full-length medallion or sort of full figure medallion that most of them are. And that was a completely chance origination from using the AI. So it was like the AI was functioning in a very similar way to like biological genealogy, and that was really fascinating. And so now we're minting Gen 3s. We're emanating Gen 3s, which is medallions 102 to eventually 421. And what's interesting, as you work your way down through the generations, just like you would have with biological genealogy, you start to get more variations, and variations that are further away from the Genesis artwork. And even I don't know where that's going to take us by the time we get to the end.
It's interesting that you say this also, because if you look at Medallion 1, right, like, and this was something, again, like when we were working on this together, I kind of didn't really know exactly what it was going to be until the end, until it was kind of like, okay, we're doing this. And so then I got to see Medallion 1, and I saw a bunch of things out of order too at the end, because we minted, you airdropped 100. But when I saw Medallion 1, I remember thinking, like, this is not like, I was expecting like the most beautiful, like craziest one. And so when you mentioned the portraits and some of these other things, it's also just fascinating to me that it came from, one does not look like it contains so much richness that it could spit out, all of these different variations. It looks like pretty normal to me. And I guess that's also kind of part of the beauty.
Yeah, I think the artwork actually evolves as we get further out in the medallions numbers. There's something a bit more primordial, I'd say, in the earlier ones.
Yeah, no, I think that's right. Very, very cool stuff. I encourage everyone to check out medallions.xyz. You can mint something there, or you can just explore the collection. There's a link to OpenSea. Very cool stuff. I think, so one question I have, actually, I guess the other question is visually looking at this, like the circle, they all have this circle, and, even the placeholder image before you've minted has the circle, and it's going to be different from the circle you mint, yet it works perfectly. Like, was there, how did you maintain that perfect aspect of it? So a lot of things change, but the circle is always, basically in the same place and looking consistent. How does that work?
It's good fortune. It's good fortune. I didn't know if the circle was going to hold. So I had to do 100 Guardians, and it held. It's just a variation process. In the first few medallions, I didn't know if the AI was going to variate away the circle. You get a variation and there's no more circle, or it looks weird or something like that. But the AI process has maintained the integrity of the circle throughout every Guardian.
And so then, if there were a variation and, the placeholder thing, was made by a person, so it's like there are some aspects of it where, I guess my question is, if there was a variation you didn't like, would you find it permissible or breaking the, the rules of this project, or even just in general? What are your feelings on like editing one of these things after it comes out?
It's such a good question. I've wrestled with it too. Because you want to follow the rules that you set for yourself. Otherwise, you wouldn't set a rule. And then at the end of the day, though, one is a creator, and you're the boss, so you make the final decision. And because the AI doesn't know what's best for a collection or a project, it's doing a lot of the work or whatever. It's a tool, but in the end, the creator makes all the final say. So if you need to do something out of the ordinary to make the collection work, if it feels right, I mean, that's fine. It wasn't easy to get there though, because it's a worthwhile question.
Well, I think it's also cool that you could always just re-roll it, and so there's there's that form of editing, which is sort of definitely allowed, just to keep doing it again and again and again. And then, you can also change the thing directly. And, what's the relationship there? Like, as a lazy person, whenever I've done this stuff, and I've done like just playing around for like 2 seconds, and my whole profile now is just re-roll, I just want again. But I think
I will say though, what I do like about Medallions Generation 1 and 2, which is the first 101, is that I did stay very strict to the original idea of the 4 emanations is the one we'll use. So I didn't do any re-rolling. The first 101, they're all like the first. They are the true emanations of the previous medallions. So you could, in addition to variation, the next thing you have to do is upscale, because it gives you a 10 by 1000 by 1000 image, more or less, which doesn't look good enough to be an artwork. You have to upscale it to a larger pixel dimension. And in the upscaling, you also get variation. But I didn't do rerolls with Generation 1 and 2 in terms of, getting different starter images. So I do like that it holds exactly true to the variation process.
This is very fascinating because, soon when we talk about my recent collection of AI, like, we have such fundamentally like different philosophies for like how to use AI art generation. And it's like fascinating to hear the other side of like someone. I think, from what you're saying, you're kind of like an AI art purist, like not very many re-rolls, very minimal to no editing. And I think that's really interesting, because then you're really leaning into this, the mystery of AI. You're really leaning into letting the AI take the reins.
Yeah, I've really enjoyed. I think purist is a good word. I've really enjoyed, not being overly involved, or very involved. Let's put it that way. I really enjoyed putting my initial imagination as a text prompt in there, and then seeing what happens.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's also a format. You could even imagine a thing, and I would love to do this maybe with an API or something, where you upload a single image into Midjourney, and it does the variations thing for you, and basically spits out a whole family tree of 420 things, basically, from that. Now, you wouldn't have the re-rolls in there, but like that would be, and then it would plot it on a, on some kind of canvas for you, and you could sort of see the family tree and see this thing evolve. Like that, I just think would be like a fascinating kind of format for this, which is, suggested by the way Midjourney works normally, but I don't think anyone really, has taken that as far. Now, if it's a collection itself, you probably want to do some editing somewhere, as you did so. But I think the format aspect, I think, is just so cool. So, I think so. What I want to do, I want to ask a couple more questions, and then I want to let anyone who's out there with a question for Sov ask, and then I want to sort of talk to Dov and see about the contrast, compare and contrast thing here. And so yeah, my last kind of question is just to sort of see, because I know Dov is more in the DALL-E. What is your view, Sov, of these different? There's DALL-E, there's Midjourney, there's the Stable Diffusion thing. There's probably others I don't know about. Like when you're thinking about yourself for future, or even just in general, but I'm also curious kind of like what you're up to next, if you can say anything about that, but just like for the future of your work, are you feeling really strongly about Midjourney and the direction that's kind of taking you, other platforms? What's your feeling on this?
It's kind of weird. I've just been, from the beginning, I've just been so comfortable at Midjourney that I haven't ventured outside very much. I did 10 minutes in DALL-E, and that's it. The rest is in Midjourney. I know there's all these other platforms, and I'm really curious about them. But up to this point, I haven't felt that I've needed them, so I've just stayed in Midjourney. Yeah, it's weird. Like I haven't used a lot of different prompts. I haven't used a lot of different, platforms.
So Piv, what does DALL-E Punk look like?
What's that?
I'm asking Piv. He did Midjourney Punk.
Oh, I did one.
You did DALL-E
Yes,
Punk.
Indeed. I think very typical is the color, the colored pixels on the bottom. They have to be there.
Yes.
Oh right. Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm sharing mine to the nest. You can clobber this, but just real quick before we clobber it. Look at this stamp. I made this with a bot prompt. Pretty good, right? Doesn't have the right spelling of the word apple, but anyway, Dov, pin the DALL-E Punk, please.
Yeah, it's pinned now. I saw Piv post the Midjourney one, and I think that I posted this, less than less than 10 minutes after he posted his, because I thought, oh, like I know what I have to do. I have to make it look worse, and I have to add the colors in the bottom right.
Yeah,
because it just lends itself perfectly. So I just took his into my pixel art software, and I just fucked it up a little bit more.
Wait, DALL-E is worse? I thought DALL-E was well, okay, so just switching gears for just a second then, not switching total gears. I wanted to actually Q&A, a little all over the place, but just how would you, Dov, then characterize DALL-E? You're saying it's worse?
I don't think there's any such thing as better or worse with these AI art tools.
You know what I mean? Like the default treatment, like the Midjourney Punk is supposed to be like the naive use of Midjourney.
I think that if you went to Midjourney and you put in the prompt of face, and that was just one word, face, and then you went into DALL-E and put in the prompt face, the Midjourney one would look much better.
That is a fascinating claim. I'm going to do this right now. I'm going to do this.
Yeah, give it a go. I think that when you fine tune, when you kind of learn your tool, I think like these AI art softwares and tools are really just that, they're tools. So the more time that you spend with one, the more that you kind of learn its little quirks and its tendencies. You learn how to coax it into giving you the image that you would like. And so you can really use any one. It's just whichever you're most comfortable or most experienced with.
All right, I'm working on this right now. I mean, I think this is a great question. And what about Stable Diffusion? Have you used this one, Dov?
No, Stable Diffusion is too confusing to me because I think that you have to muddle with some code. You have to do more than typing in words, and I just I haven't felt the need to do that because DALL-E serves so well for my purposes.
I find it shocking, somewhat shocking. This is, by the way, the face experiment is going really well. I'm going to post this in a second, and then we can move to Q&A. The thing that I find shocking about DALL-E, though, is it puts the colored squares on there. It's like,
Yeah,
what is
but
this?
you'll notice
It's
that
terrible.
in my work, you never see the colored squares.
Yeah, I guess you know how to.
Can you not?
Okay.
There is an interesting Twitter account from someone who does everything in stable diffusion, and it's called Kali Yuga. I think she had to defend herself many times because of her name, but it's Kali Yuga _AI, and it looks very fantasy kind of.
Yeah, I've seen her work. It's good.
Yeah,
I like her stuff.
Yeah, and very different than both DALL-E and Midjourney. I think it's more like drone or something, hand drawn.
Okay, I'm sharing to the Nest now, and I want to hear your thoughts on this. So when it shows up,
in the
it's shared.
meantime, maybe you should mention the.
Yes, it looks exactly how I expected it to. This is this is good. This verifies how I assumed this would work.
So, do you see this?
Are we talking about Face now or the other account?
Oh, sorry, I maybe cut off Piv there. I just got too excited about Face. What do you think, Piv?
About Face? No, I just wanted to mention because you talked of family tree just an hour ago. Meuleman posted a family tree of the angels.
Yes.
So
yeah,
it looks quite intriguing, I have to say.
That's a visualizer. It animates things. It's quite amazing.
Yes, I encourage everyone to take a look at this, and I have seen the animation as well, which is not on this. But yeah, I pinned this actually to the net. This is actually really, without this, it's kind of maybe a little bit even hard unless you spend a lot of time with the images to really imagine like what we're talking about here. But with this, you can really see, how rigid the the sort of underlying order that is behind all of these just sort of ethereal images. So I recommend taking a.
But the question, Sof, is do you want it or or don't you want it? That it is laid out like this.
Wait. You're asking if I like the faces?
No. If you like the family tree.
The family tree. Oh, the one that was posted?
Yes, that Meuleman did. Yes.
Yeah. So that's. I mean, I love it. That's Meuleman's interpretation and interactive creation, where you can easily see the emanation lines.
Yeah.
Between the different. I mean, I think it's fantastic.
Yeah, I also think so. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, part of what's hard to see on OpenSea is, I mean, you can click on the generation trait and find the ancestor image, but it's not the best way to see it. So what Meuleman's done is made currently a visualizer where it makes it fun and easy to see how the images visually relate to each other through the emanations, which is so cool.
Yeah. That's really helpful because I'll be honest, I wasn't super familiar with medallions before this. I had seen Guardians, but I have kind of fallen behind. But this is helpful to understand the process. I like that.
Yeah. So I think you can just put your cursor on a particular medallion, and it will bring up, the other medallions that are related to it. And what's I get so excited about this, but it's so interesting to see different images, like completely different artworks that share similar qualities with the ancestor artwork, and the way that those qualities show themselves in the emanated images can be very different and very creative. But you can't deny that there's a linkage there, and it's an artistic linkage in different works. So I'm eternally fascinated by that process.
Very cool. I mean, it'd be amazing also to have them. You could have there really be the surprise to the user too about like what gets born. I mean, right now it's really you got to be really in the Discord, which is unfortunate. But I'm sure this will have. Okay, so pausing for a moment. Anyone out there, if you have a question for anyone up here, but especially so about his process, about the world, the art and culture behind AI in 2022 Q4, if you want tips, if you want to promote your own work in a very cynical way, these are all potential
free to come up.
topics.
While we're waiting, if anyone wants to come up, just a quick shout out to SZ Candle in the audience here. They just won Claire Silver's like AI art contest, or they were a runner-up or a finalist or something like that. Anyway, and I was introduced to their work through that, and I just won an auction for one of their artworks, which was done with Stable Diffusion. So shout out to them. We got AI artists in the chat, in the listeners, and up here as well. So that's very cool. It's cool to see so many people doing it. I think like the AI art scene is going to grow really fast.
It's almost unbelievable and terrifying if you have a child to think about this, just it being the only thing. I kind of think it's cool to use this a lot, but also know about like the crayons, and the colors. But it's all over.
I think you have to have a combination there. You have to do both.
Burnt sienna, ochre. If you don't know the names of the colors, you might run into some problems with the crossword puzzle, because occasionally you'll see ochre on there. Who's got a question? Come on, Mad Yak, calling you out. You just nope, never mind. You're safe. We got Mr. One. How do I do this? Oh, we got two people. Excellent. All right, in the game, Mr. One, you were first. What do you have to share? Just the heart.
Oh, no dead air.
No dead air. Oh my God! All right, let's just take a quick pause to get some emoji out there to get the energy up for just a second. Can everyone throw a heart for the algorithm and for love? Okay, so no dead air. We got that. Okay, Mad Yak, what would you like to share for a moment?
Good afternoon. Good afternoon. So I was reading an article a couple of days ago about Adobe and the Pantone color system. I'm not an Adobe user, but I was curious. Dove, have you run into any issues with that, or do you even use those the color set?
No, and I think people are overreacting. You can't ban a hex code.
Yeah.
All colors online are just hex codes.
That's what I was like. This is not that big a deal. I mean, you can find the color.
Right.
You can figure it out, right?
Essentially, what they've done is they've gated the option on Adobe to let you use the Pantone color profile, which makes it easier to align the colors that you design on the web when they are getting printed or made into a fabric or whatever brought into the real world. It just makes that process easier. They've just basically made a designer's job more difficult if they are someone who works with a company that desires Pantone specific paint swatches.
Yeah, and it's wild because if you have the hard copies of those books, they're like $2,000, and they want you to buy a new one every year, and they don't even give you a free subscription to use on Adobe, and that's just wild. I can't believe it.
And yet they do tell you though the color of the year, and they've never really missed. They don't miss on the color of the year, so I appreciate Pantone. Yeah, but color profiles, I think that's the whole game. In my opinion, that's a little off the topic, but just one thing that I've always found to be humorous is that for me personally, it is impossible or very difficult to take a screenshot and then paste that screenshot into like Twitter or Discord or whatever and have it look the same.
This
and
is
that
because
is called color profiles.
you were a Mac user. This is why.
Yes. So it's like, if colors are just hex codes, why don't my screenshots work? But it's color profiles, it's complicated. It's fine. Pantone, they've got to ruthlessly defend their situation. If they didn't, someone else would.
Have we got Mr. One back? Or if not, we can go to With Hearts. Welcome, With Hearts. Whichever one of you is available.
Hey, how's it going? I had a question for Sav. Love the project, love Guardians, love Medallions. And you tweeted yesterday that Guardians will be updated soon. So just wanted to see if there's any alpha, what's coming on.
Yeah. Hey, With Hearts. I meant to phrase that as a question. I kind of wanted us to decide together if we wanted to do something. It's nothing too crazy, but the upscaler technology keeps getting better, and so there's a possibility that we can increase the pixel size of the Guard to double the pixel size of the Guardians from around 5,000 to around 10,000, which is interesting when I see the results. So I was going to talk about that in the Discord a bit, and we can see if we like that idea.
Well, just to jump in, can you just explain a little more, like upscaling, and that's AI itself too, the way that works? Could you maybe explain a little more about what that part of your process is like?
Yeah, I think it's crazy. Not that many people are talking about upscaling, but it's kind of incredible and new, and a big part of the process for my creations as well. So upscaling uses AI to, as the name implies, make small or blurry images larger and more clear. And if you do that without the proper AI algorithm running, you're just going to get like an image that doesn't look good because it's just bigger. But I think the AI is building pixels in a creative way to make the final product better. So Midjourney gives you a 1024 pixel square, which doesn't look great as a work of art. So you have to use an upscaler. There's one built into Midjourney, but it only takes you so far. So if you want a larger size image that you can actually relate to visually, you use an upscaler, which has AI included, to take your small 1,000 pixel square and make it into 5,000 or 10,000 or even more. And that creates interesting differences from the original as well. So the upscaling process actually creates different artwork and makes things. It is quite creative. What's that?
Does it add details?
Oh yes, lots of details. Incredible. Like I'm regularly blown away. So like NFTs, like people don't really spend much. It's a kind of a mobile on your mobile phone thing or on your computer. People don't spend much time going into the details, I think. There's a whole world when you upscale, including all the Medallions work. There's another world of detail when you zoom in, which is, to me, quite incredible. The variations of color, the way things are organized and represented on a zoom in level is amazing. So that's I think that's a part of the work that doesn't get seen very often because of the devices we use.
Definitely. Mm-hmm. I was thinking about that. I just visited his name is Todd Kramer. He's the founder of Goda, which is like this I don't know what they call themselves, but he's an art gallerist. He's an art gallery here in New York City. I went and visited there last week, and they had these insanely impressive displays that were specifically built by a company to be used for NFTs. So they like connect to your wallet. They look it's like gallery quality framing. The display has like no glare. They're perfect. And looking at those, it made me realize that same kind of thing. They're like, oh, like I'm only ever looking at things on my MacBook screen or my iPhone screen. Like I'm only ever looking at it at a max resolution of like 1920 by 1080. Yeah. But I should be looking at art that is, big, right? Like it fits on, it goes on a wall, not on a phone. You know, it's 3 feet by 2 feet. You know, it's large. And I was thinking about, you know, imagine an artist like Hieronymus Bosch, who's like very famous for packing his art with details. You know, every square inch of a Hieronymus Bosch painting is full of little intricacies and details that you have to get really close to see. And to look at his work on the phone, you kind of have to zoom and like look around. And sure, you can do that with like NFT art, but I think just the nature of NFTs and the way that they're like commodified, people don't really do that very often. So it's nice to think about stuff like that. And I've used AI upscaling as well. It's a super, super helpful tool.
Yeah. I think just to give an idea about how new all this is, when I was, before we had airdropped the medallions, but I was quite a ways into it.
Right at the I-40 East.
Matt, yeah, I think your speaker's on.
So anyway, when I was upscaling to the level I wanted, the upscaler was creating some really unpleasant artifacts, or just backgrounds. Like it just did not look good at all when I went to a certain level of depth, which is the 10,000 pixels that they're currently at. And I wasn't really sure what to do because, you know, I wanted that level of detail, but the upscaler was degrading the artworks at that level. But then, so I'm using Gigapixel, which is a software you can purchase. They updated their software, and that they corrected the degradation effect that was happening while I was working on the project, and I was able to get the results I wanted just because they did an update during the process. So that kind of blew my mind as to how current, how new the tools are that we're using, that they're affecting the projects while we're working on them.
That's out there for you all, by the way. You heard of Midjourney. Have you heard of Gigapixel? I'm actually on the site right now. I just checked it out, and they got some pretty convincing like little sliders on here. I want to play with this. I wonder if they can finally get a CryptoPunk the height of the Eiffel Tower. This was one of Piv's pieces of art. Piv.
Yeah.
It's pixel art. It's easier to resize.
What was it again? They made a very big image of a Rembrandt painting, I think.
Oh, I was just looking at that just the other day. I mean, it was done by having multiple digital photos, but
yes, indeed.
Right, the Night Watch. I almost tweeted about that 2 nights ago.
And then I did an SVG of a punk the size of the Eiffel Tower. But it's just changing the numbers. It's in the code. So, but that's quite a while ago. I did that one.
You know, one thing interesting about the upscalers is it changes some of the hierarchy, in my opinion, about file formats for images. I think we generally think of PNG as the best image process, and then JPEG is something lower in terms of quality, because we're usually using those file formats to take something from a larger size original, say in Photoshop, and we're compressing it, or not in terms of PNG, but like the JPEG is a compressed image of the original, and you're getting loss of detail basically. But when you're using an upscaler, you're not compressing at all. You're going the other direction. You're not taking a large original, getting smaller. You're taking a small original, you're getting bigger. And JPEG is not necessarily a worse option than PNG in that case, because it's a completely different operation.
And plus on their site, it shows them, I mean, if this is real, I'm sure it's like pretty much real. Like on their site, it shows them effortlessly beyond like the upscaling, just like removing the JPEG artifacts. So it's kind of like, yeah, what's the problem? You know, even if you keep something the same size, if you have these annoying JPEG artifacts, but who cares if they're in the quote unquote image? The thing that going forward, probably in the future, people will use to view the image will just use AI to get rid of all these gross artifacts no matter what. Yeah. So, you know, who cares? That is a fascinating thing. And yeah, I think it will take a while before my, you know, PNG chauvinism or whatever will end. I'm such a PNG snob, but it does not matter.
Yeah, what's really great is that they, you know, I think a lot of people in the world and are kind of against AI. They don't like AI just like as a blanket term. What Adobe has done, which I think is really important and like broadening the number of people who are using AI, is they've put AI upscaling and they've put AI de-artifacting directly into Photoshop, and they don't call it AI, they call it a neural filter. So there's a lot of people who are using these AI upscaling and AI artifacting tools who might not even like realize that that's what they're doing. And I think that that's really great for, just making it more accepted to be using AI assisted, kind of tools in your work.
For sure. I think the content aware, Phil, I don't know if that's AI, they don't say neural, but I am always shocked by that. Just imagine if you are a child who's never seen this, what your life is going to be like. It's almost unimaginable. So question for you then, Dov. So, you mentioned, we're talking about Photoshop. You use Photoshop. Talk about a little bit, because you made a TikTok that kind of got into your process. Talk a little bit about your process and your use of DALL-E and how, that is kind of different from the approach that we've kind of gotten into so far in terms of the role of the AI specifically.
Yeah, so I just did a collection called October 22, just a reference to a self-imposed challenge that I gave myself, which was to create an image every single day with AI for the month of October. And, I had a specific theme in mind that I wanted to do. And so I felt that I needed extra control. And I also kind of have this feeling that if I do the prompt alone, then I haven't done enough, or like the image is not conveying what I want it to convey. So I have to push it along. I have to aid the AI in getting there. The AI can get me 90% of the way there, but in order for like this image to really say and like really convey what I want it to convey, I need to edit it further. I'm just asking it for something that it doesn't know how to do. So for me, that editing process is really important. And the same thing for, what we were talking about earlier with like re-rolling. There are days where on DALL-E you buy like 115 credits at once, and each credit allows you one generation. And there were a couple days where I burned through, 50 or 60 prompt generations in order to achieve the base of the image that I would end up using for that day's daily. So there's like a lot of iteration and a lot of editing that goes on there.
And so when you put it into Photoshop, though, because you made the TikTok, you were mentioning kind of some specific techniques and tricks that you kind of put together that, because, when you look at the images, they do have a kind of, so they don't look like even digital images always. So what were some of for anyone listening who wants to kind of know from a TikTok standpoint, some concrete tricks or things they could try? What were some of the things you did?
Sometimes I just couldn't get the composition that I wanted. I in my head, I have a perfect composition of what I want it to look like. The one that I made the TikTok of was like a particularly edit intensive work. I can try to pull that up to nest it. But essentially what I ended up having to do, because I couldn't get this very specific thing that I wanted, I generated it in pieces. So what I wanted was an eyeball looking through a peephole. That was the idea of this art. And when I would type in eyeball looking through a peephole, it was just always wrong. I think the AI got kind of confused by, the fisheye effect that I was asking it for. It was getting confused by, is the eyeball, how far away is it from the peephole? Is it someone far away? Is it someone close by? There's these like very specific things that if you have a specific idea in mind, you really need to do some work to get it. So what I did was, generate a peephole that was fine and was kind of empty in the middle. And then separately, I generated the eyeball that I wanted. a couple other things. I generated, a better metal texture. Something that I really discovered is that DALL-E is great for generating like Photoshop textures. If you want to make it look like something is metal, or make it look like something is dusty, or has a wood grain, paper texture, etc., you can generate those too. And then I just I composited all of those in Photoshop to achieve the final thing. Let me see if I can find this so I can nest it. That'll be more helpful.
I think that's also an interesting way to think about it, where because DALL-E is so, and as you can see from that tweet I did with the faces, it's so kind of like raw, in a way. It doesn't bring, kind of the ambiance. You can, maybe it's better for the composability aspect, where you can say, I'm specifically going to go for a texture here. And these textures, you have to buy textures, typically, and there are some bad looking, textures and this kind of thing. So I think that's kind of a little life hack, I think, is thinking about just abandoning for a moment the notion of being able to generate your full scene or something close to it, and really thinking, okay, what are the little pieces, and not even necessarily the representational pieces, but just the the more atomic elements. So you don't have to buy a texture generator.
Yeah, this was something that was really important to me with this month, is that I didn't want to use outside resources, because you're right, you do have to pay for textures generally. Like Photoshop texture packs can run you a couple $100 if they're really high quality. But I wanted to make sure that everything that I did was entirely in AI, with like edits done by me in Photoshop. So I just put this in the nest. There are like watermarks on the glass. There are metal scratches, all of these kinds of things. This image is probably 7 different AI generations composited on top of one another. And then even things like, the eyeball. The eye, when I generated it, wasn't round. DALL-E has a problem with geometry. It doesn't like squares. It doesn't like straight lines. It doesn't like circles. So I had to go in and kind of Photoshop myself some more roundness to the eye, so that it didn't look very obviously fake.
Very cool. Very cool. Yeah, if you look at this image, it's like, what exactly, it doesn't have the same aspect to it. So both of the tools, I think, are really, really interesting. And I think it's a great contrast there. So I guess, first of all, any questions? We're finishing up here. So if anyone has any questions, say it. But then the last question I'd have for all of the people here.
Middlemarch, I'm not sure if maybe we can talk a bit about the Softpunk Museum.
Of course, yes.
I don't think Burke will show up anymore, but maybe Soft can talk a little bit about it.
Yeah, I think so. Softpunk Museum. Maybe let Sov just kind of get into it. And yeah, you're right. That's a very good point, because the exhibition there is very, very cool and very, very on topic. So yes, very good point. So would you mind telling everyone about what's up on that front?
Yeah, we were hoping Burke.f would join us for this call. So, I mean, as probably some of you know, in OnCyber, we have Softpunk Museum, which houses the permanent collection of punks, 144 punks in the Softpunk collection. But what we're usually doing is having an exhibit with another artist. So it's they fill the gallery with their work, and we keep a couple of punks in there. And currently, the exhibit is with Burke Ozdemir, Burke.f, and he's completely transformed this museum experience from top to bottom. It's quite a thing. You should go check it out. It's at OnCyber /Softpunk. So Burke.f has been doing AI work for years, really. I mean, I think he's done some of the earliest projects. The whole BGAN Punks project is a GAN AI project from 2021. So he's been around doing really, really cool stuff for a long time, and he does a lot of glitch work, and so he's covered the walls, ceilings, and floors of the museum in his very colorful artwork. So it's a very different experience. We'll have
Very
another
cool.
event with,
Do you have any idea how he has made these punks?
I might be slightly mistaken, but I think it was before you could do text prompts or anything like that.
Yes.
It was last year, but or maybe it's 2020. I can't remember. I bought the first.
I think the first ones are indeed April 2020. I think yes.
Yeah. So
Mhm.
I actually bought the first ones from him, and then he did Began Punks like 9 months later, version 2. So
Yeah.
he fed the images into the GAN himself. And I don't know the exact process for how he did that, but he did an independent project where he was responsible for. So the AI platforms now we're using, other people have already gone ahead and done all this like AI training, but I believe he was the one doing that himself.
Yeah.
So he fed in all the punk images, all 10,000, and then in whatever way he did, he would train them to get the outputs that he did.
Yeah.
Which, if you don't know Began Punks, I mean, I'm assuming most people do, but like they are glitchy versions of the CryptoPunks.
The original
Yeah,
Midjourney punks, in a way.
That's
The
an
original
understatement.
Piv thing.
Yeah.
It's an understatement, but like it's a very overstated collection. So all you can do is understate when you describe it.
Yeah, that's very true.
Very cool. Very cool. And so, what is GAN? I know I should look this up and not embarrass myself. But what it was for anyone who's driving, for example, and doesn't want to embarrass themselves. What is GAN?
Is it generative adversarial network? Is that what it is?
Oh,
Yeah,
I love it.
Yeah,
that sounds great. So it's sort of like you have to train it yourself, kind of thing.
Right.
Versus
So
pre-trained.
that's what AI was. AI art was that before these platforms came along. So if you look at the Lost Robbies, that's GAN. Robbie
I know
Barrett
that. I'm gonna check that
Robbie
out.
Barrett was Robbie Barrett was doing GAN work before anybody really, and before crypto art was started. Robbie Barrett was doing GAN artwork. So the first, like some of the very first super rare mints are the Lost Robbies, Robbie Barrett's GAN work. If you haven't seen them, they are classics of NFT art.
They're sort of unsettling, at least the ones I'm looking at.
Yeah, well,
maybe that's fine.
we love unsettling artwork.
So is that a problem? Or go ahead.
I mean, some of those have a. Yeah, go ahead.
I was just gonna, is this a problem, right? I'm a big fan of the historical approach, history and philosophy kind of thing, where I like history more. I like them both, but you look back even like 10 minutes and everything looks like super vintage. Is that a problem for anyone creating art in this genre? And I understand, yeah, you embrace it, but still, if you're doing a painting today, you know that your painting is not going to be obsolete in 2 years based on the medium that you're using. It's not going to be obsolete in the conventional sense. It's not going to be worse than it would be if you did it then, right? It's going to be basically the same, right? Like with the AI thing, it will be probably, the argument would go, worse than if you did it in 2 years, like as judged by your own aesthetic standards. So with painting, you don't have that problem. And with AI art, you arguably do have that problem. And so does that make it all meaningless?
I think you always have, in any medium of work, you always have this risk. I mean, look at how many artists today are doing a Basquiat thing or are doing an XCopy thing. If you're not the first to do something, then you'll be labeled as outdated or as copying or something, right? I think in less than a year, I think in a year, 2 years, 6 months, any sort of time frame that's like very, very short, people are going to think that Midjourney and DALL-E art looks very dated, because like we were saying with like the AI upscaler getting upgraded, these AI generation tools are too going to be upgraded. Midjourney is going to tweak their formula. They're going to say, oh, we don't want to produce as fantastical work, so we're introducing this new image set, and now it's going to produce a little bit different. There's always going to be a turn a change. And I think especially so in AI work, but I think that it applies to physical work too. The trends will always be that.
But then 5 years later, people will be looking for this early Midjourney look again. I think.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah. Ultimately, as a creator, you don't really have a choice. I mean, we know that's how it is, and you still have to create and do your best now, and then see how it goes.
No, I agree with that. And of course, that's true. And like, I think being early on something like this and creating that look and the vintage, whatever, and it's so much more important to be early when the thing is moving at 10 million miles per second. If you're that's the benefit too. You're to be actually really in the early days when they're over in a second. Like imagine these folks in 2020, an entire 2 years ago. It's like they were really early and it was over in a second. So I agree with that. At the same time, there is just something that must be acknowledged about how terrifying this rate of change is. I refuse to allow that not to be acknowledged, and not to say that should make us depressed about creating art and talking about it or whatever, but it must be acknowledged that it is absolutely terrifying. Can we please acknowledge that, or no, we refuse?
Look at this thing that I just pinned. It should populate for you soon. Look at these two images and tell me that these don't look exactly like terraforms and autoglyphs.
All right.
Well, the one on the left looks more so. I guess the one on the right, I mean, I'm not super familiar with autoglyphs, I guess, all the details, but yeah. I think, but this is different. This is generative autoglyphs. There is a box. Generative art is its own.
No. This on the right is generative. A computer.
This on the right is generative? I thought someone signed it. No, it's not generative. Someone signed it at the bottom right.
No, I promise you. I know. It's reality crazier than fiction.
It's from the 60s or something, where generative art started.
Correct.
That's sweet.
Yeah.
And then they plotted it out, the plotter.
Well, I would buy that one on the right. One on the left is also cool, but a little more like on the nose or whatever. But
so yeah, I mean, just to answer the question, I think the one on the right, it's still great.
Of course.
Even though whatever,
I agree completely. I think both of these are very fantastic. I would love to collect either of these.
Yeah.
I just think the AI thing is a little different, though, in that it is fundamentally, if there's a procedure, it's just not a procedural thing. Like generative art that's built around some type of like procedural thing. You can think people in the 60s, thought about interesting algorithms. It's not like people are inventing new algorithms. You know what I mean? Like new procedural, complicated things. Whereas the AI thing is just on a totally different. Well, anyway, I don't have to, really just try to convince you all to be terrified. But I think it's I don't think anyone would have said that we don't have the tools in the 60s to do this art. I don't think anyone even today would be saying, we can write a better computer program than they could in the 60s. I mean, we can, but like to create something. So I don't know. I mean, it's just terrifying to me, the pace of change.
So the question for me is like, well, for you, what is terrifying then?
What is terrifying is the knowledge that the future, the past and the future are just completely incomprehensible relative to one another. And because of that, it is hard to make decisions. Not decisions. It's easy to make decisions in the sense that like you have to do your best and get breakfast or whatever. But like, in terms of like actual investment decisions, not just like money, but like your time and everything. It's like, it's really, really, it becomes really hard to do that kind of thing when the future is becoming so incomprehensible. Like, again, the most extreme example is like, how do you raise your kid? You know what I mean? Like when I was a kid, they stupidly tried to limit the video games that I played when really my entire life would become trying to program metaphorical video games for other people. But also you don't want to spend your whole life on your computer or whatever playing video games. So, that was the baby wheels, the playpen version that my parents faced. I face, and I don't know, this is actually a great question for you. So pausing here, have you used Oculus or something like that. It's actually called Quest. They've retired the Oculus brand, but one of these headsets where it takes you to virtual reality. Have you tried this?
Yeah, sure.
I tried it. I don't know what you thought. I was just like, oh my God. So that's like double, it's like the Dolly thing. And then the idea of going into it. What's this going to be like in 2 years? I thought. So, I think in 5 years or 10 years, when my kid is finally entering into whatever phase of development where, she can think more abstractly or whatever, it is going to be, and then that's of course always been true, right? But is it more true now? And that is the question of where terror comes into play. Can you reason about the world today? Can you make decisions about the world today, or is it all completely meaningless because all the stuff you need to know is 2 years out? I don't know. This is a little extreme way to put it, but it can be a little terrifying, no?
Yeah. Okay, this is going to sound kind of sort of broad, but I'll tell you where I get my comfort from. I agree with you that all these things are going to change, and there's going to be lots of things happening. It's going to be kind of blinding and a whirlwind and confusing. But I have a great faith in human creativity and the human spirit that will also be there, creating and doing and speaking things that other people feel are valuable and meaningful in a way that feels right. So alongside all these advancements, I think we're also going to be there, having our voices heard and to the best we can. And I get a lot of, I feel good about that. So
I agree with that. But let me just try to put a finer point on it with respect to the upscaling thing, right? Suppose you had the bad upscaling tech that was bad, and you spent an insane amount of time to make it work with that, and then the new tech was released a day later. I don't know. Anyway, I see. Okay,
it's good. So maybe this will make you feel better. Vera Molnar, who did the 1970s autoglyph, she released NFTs. If you're someone who, she in the 1960s, 1970s was doing this very groundbreaking computer art, and today she's still around and trying to learn and get into this this stuff. I think that is inspiring, to embrace the change and lean into it. When you're early, I think you get a better foresight into how it will evolve and can keep up better. So,
yeah, the reverse is way more depressing. When I was unaware of Ethereum, when I was running my previous company, Genius, before I sold it last year, I was literally completely depressed about what might happen if I was no longer running Genius, which I've been doing for 12 years. I was like, what am I going to do? Because I didn't know about Ethereum. I was like, this sucks. I'm not going to die. And then it was oh, this whole other world of all this cool stuff, And so stasis is really bad. And that's what I thought I'd experienced there. I was I did the Web 2 thing, ad tech. It's really an ad tech thing now. I guess I'll go try to get better at ad tech was basically, the thing. So how do I buy her NFTs?
You can't. I've reached out and tried to buy them. The people who hold them, I think that they might have given up on the auction, or it just hasn't happened yet. But I've been working to collect one of her NFTs, but I've been unsuccessful. But even with Genius.com, okay, you did it for such a long time, still using it today. So your contributions will echo. Being early, doing things early has, continues forward. People look at it, 50 years later and say, wow, that's got to count for something.
Yeah, no, that's true. It's out of the desiccated, the dried up husk of your, self that hopefully the website lives on.
From a creator's perspective too, it's we just want people to be interested and affected and maybe moved by what we create now. So that's a win. That's a win right there, and just from a creativity perspective. And if that happened, you can never take away that someone felt a resonance with an artwork. That's set in stone. Even if things move on, that's okay.
But you are happy, so correct me if I'm wrong, that you have the tools available to you versus the tools available to the Robbies, right? You can't say that you're happy, right?
I've never compared the tools that I had available. I'm happy with what I have now.
Yeah, because what are you going to do? You're going to say, "Oh, I'm so mad that I don't have the tools of the future," and that's insane.
Yes, that's what I'm saying. That you should spend all your time saying. That is the good use of time to bemoan that. No, I agree. more than bemoan. I just mean it's an interesting thing to think about because things are, and it wasn't always like this. Like in the 2010s, like I don't know if y'all remember this, pretty slow pace. I gotta say, pretty. Like I would say 2000 to 2010, really fast. 2010 to 2020, pretty basic. I feel like a bunch of people have been asking to speak. Is there someone who's trying to speak?
I got one thing real quick, just on the like fear of the increasing pace of technological and societal change and all of that. Like I can certainly not an artist myself, but I can imagine, feeling like, oh, is what I put out there, is it going to just be buried by this mountain of output, particularly with like AI, where people can just sort of plug stuff in or whatever. But I would think the one counterpoint that comes to mind to that is that as like AI and computing continues to get better, then that it can then sift through that mountain that much better, and that sort of big data, and be able to draw connections and conclusions, and you wouldn't just be like lost in the sands of time necessarily.
Yeah, maybe the AI can say, here's how you should apply your unique creativity, and here is all the other stuff that I can take care of better.
Yeah.
And just like, oh, look at what this guy did, 10 years ago. Like this is cool and is worth people learning about. And so your efforts, even if someone 6 months later puts out a flashier looking AI generated piece, there, you could be, you won't be lost to basically time. You could be discovered by the algorithm.
By the
maybe they'll put you in a cage and they'll say, you're an interesting specimen yourself. And
I have to say, Middlemarch, this like fear that you're talking about, this fear is the entire premise of my AI art collection. It's, in AI, there's a concept of, the black box, where when you type a prompt into Midjourney and it spits out an image, what happens in between those two things is unknowable completely. You can look at the code. The people who made Midjourney, no one knows how it got from the prompt to the output. It's a black box. It's unknowable. And this fear that we have with AI and with the onward march of time and progression and technology is like very scary to me. And it's scary for that reason, that you are constantly reaching into these unknowns and you kind of don't know what's there. The scariest things in life are when you don't know what's going to happen. When you like hear a sound outside your window and you don't know what it is. Or like you're looking through the peephole of your apartment door and you don't know who's out there. It's like a stranger, right? So like these unknowns are very scary. That is what I was trying to get across for the month of October.
It's also the elimination of mystery, because it is unknown, but that somewhere it's following like computer rules. Like there's some thought experiment, that's like, hey, could you ever find a human being that would have this capability, that if you gave them a mathematical statement, that they would be able to encode that as a piece of music and play the piece of music. And then if that music sounded good to them, it was a true statement of mathematics that they encoded. And if that music sounded dissonant, it was a false statement of mathematics. And it's known that there's no way to do that with a computer. You can't give a computer a statement of math and then the computer will tell you if it's true or false. It's like one of the big memes. But could a human do it in some kind of intuitive, weird, music way? Or now, is that just, completely, irrelevant? There's a whole community of people, the rationalistic community of people who like to think about the sort of general intelligence thing when, the Terminator 2 type scenario. And there is a thought experiment that is sort of funny that they like, which is premised on the idea that if a super intelligent computer in the future were able to in a lab grow a new clone of you and then, hurt that clone, like that would be bad for you. That's like the premise of this thought experiment. So ask yourself, would it be bad for you if you knew that an exactly similar clone of you was getting, tortured or whatever? But like the thought experiment is, suppose that you know that you have the ability to devote your life to bringing about the rise of general artificial intelligence. Then suppose you choose not to do that. Well, eventually general artificial intelligence is going to be invented. And when it is, it's going to know all the people who knew that they could help it but didn't, and it's going to resurrect them and torture them. And that's going to be bad for you. So if you hear this, if you're aware of this, now you're all poisoned. You have to spend your entire life trying to bring about AI overlords, because if you believe they'll come here eventually and you believe they will know everything about you, which they will, then they have the ability to retroactively, punish you for this. And this is the
Rocco's basilisk.
How do you know about that? Are you a rationalist person?
No, I know a thing or two. I did some research.
I didn't even know the name of it. Good job. This is like a pretty obscure nerd meme, I feel, no?
Yeah, maybe.
But it's also a bit of a variation on the time travelers. Like the party that how is he called? The physicist who gave a party for time travelers, but he announced it the day after the party.
Right. Yeah, I mean, I think in this
it's
case,
a bit like this here.
What's the basis for the intense sort of identification with the clone? Is just that you're like so similar and you don't want someone that's like you to be her because you think you're cool? Or
it's not just like you, it is you.
Well, no, I mean, I think it's a little more. The basis for the identification I view, so this is another classic personal identity thing that's like super annoying and fun if you're, talking about it in like a late night with Brad. So, the question is to consider the teleportation example and say, okay, well, is teleporting, should you identify with the person who shows up in the teleporter on the other end of the thing? And then, well, it's Star Trek and they do, but what if they make a clone and two people show up? And so then you might think, well, neither of those people is me. So the anti-clone argument is teleporting, which breaks you down and sends you and maybe even takes the particles and clones you and this kind of stuff. So that's you're not the clone. The pro-identifying with the clone argument is to ask yourself, what happens every night when you go to sleep? What do you don't know. Could be a clone the next day. There's certainly a break in your consciousness in this kind of way. And so every second to the next, like you share no atoms with yourself 10 years ago. So are you the same person? Should you identify with the clone of yourself in 10 years that is none of the atoms you share, but blah, blah, blah. So yeah, I think it's basically a apt situation.
This is a really good tie-in. And I think when you are talking about AI and maybe AI art in particular, it's impossible to avoid these kinds of like spiritual and philosophical questions. And I think this is a good tie-in with, Sov's art and talking about, he's created these angels using AI. And these are kind of good omens. And with my collection, October 22, I've created these spheres, which maybe you could interpret as demons. And I just find it fascinating that, you can't escape this unknowable force in AI, right? It leads you into all of these questions of like, is this real? What is the future? What am I looking at? How can I be sure that this is real? How can I be sure that I'm real? What if AI perfectly recreates me? All of these things. And I think that is, to me, the most interesting part of AI art. And I think it's very cool that Sov kind of, it seems to me, I don't want to put words in your mouth, but kind of came to a similar kind of thought pattern thinking about these kinds of things. And it's good. I think that this was a good chat today.
Hell yeah. Hell yeah. Yeah. You know how in math class they'd say, well, it doesn't matter if you get the right answer, just show your work. Well, you're never going to have to explain. No, you will have to show your work in that specific context. But okay, last question for Sov and for you, Dov, and for anyone. The grandparents of these things was GPT-3, which was the text-based one. And text-based artificial intelligence actually is the only one that I use, because I use it to write programs for me. When I don't know what to write next, I just stop typing and it will suggest something. It's really quite amazing. Do either of you work with the text-based one at all? So,
Not yet, but I want to because I think it's really interesting. And before I was creating visual images, I was writing things with words. So it's really interesting to me, but I haven't gotten around to it yet.
Boom. Dove?
I have not, and I don't have any particular interest in doing so. I don't think that I am very good with words, and I don't know. I prefer to listen. I think sometimes I talk a lot on this podcast, but I think in general I am not one that often. I never feel like I need something to help me speak. I don't know. I don't know.
I think it's an amazing thing, and when I first saw it, that was when I first kind of knew. Everyone has their first moment. Well, thank you all so much, and in particular to our special guest Sov. If anyone has any other questions, you can feel free to DM us, and I encourage you all to read and check out Medallions at XYZ. That's Sov's project. There's of course the Punk on Cyber Gallery. Which is really just an incredible thing. That's oncyber.io/SovPunk. Is that right, Sov?
Yep, that's right.
And so check that out.
I loved the Maryland exhibit you did a while ago.
That was where we all met. That was so nice.
That was a lot of fun. That was my first time in on Cyber, and then I went out and bought the same room that Sov had. I haven't really used it yet, but I had to have it once I saw how effective and cool it was. So yeah, I'm gonna make some use of that. But check that out, y'all. Check out Dove's work on Foundation DV. Dove, how do they see your work?
It's in my pinned thing.
It's in the pin.
Foundation.com/dovetail.
And then Piv, I'm sorry because this whole chat has made me very nervous about AI. I might have to go bid on Piv's Midjourney Punk, which is, I believe, for sale on Foundation right now. Is that right, Piv?
Yes, it's on Foundation.
All right, so that's the Capsule 21 podcast. Check out these fine artworks and join us again next week, 5 p.m. Eastern Time every Thursday. And if you're listening to this, good job. You're next. Goodbye.